up to speed, up to speed, up to speed.
Live from the apocalypse, Go Gadget Flow. This is State of the Game. Welcome. The short version is I am your host, Dano. I am the excitable, insatiable one. My co-host, Kay, is the cool and tactful one, right? That is what we do, right? This is like it's like one of those cop movies, but we're not cops, we're just people hanging out. But we have two guests here today. Would say very excited to have joining us from Japan, the the Joe Montana of the Secret House Against podcast. Someone like I first saw on the Shrapnel review, and it was like watching a great NBA superstar drop 50 at the Garden. I was like, I gotta talk to this person. This Mega from Secret House Against. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate the kind words. I recall your message on the Rap Music Plug podcast Discord, and I was like, oh man, that's nice. It's nice of you. Thank you. Yeah, Secret House Against Tokyo-based hip hop art and culture bullshit.
Doing it, man. And the first words that I ever said to our next guest was, "We're already crew."
I remember that.
OGNick Marsh was nervous and said, "We're already crew," because Nick Marsh has never had a generic day in his life. His tastes have flavor, and you might not agree with them, but they're interesting as fuck. And I remember so many times where there was a great album that came out, and it was just me and Nick Marsh against the whole fucking world.
Yeah.
Like, this fucking album rules. Everybody, like, what are you talking about? I've never heard of that shit. So I appreciate that. We're already crew. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me again. I had a blast last time. I'm about to have a blast again. So
yeah, man.
So we started off because this is our Lupe Fiasco scouting report. We're doing it. We're breaking Lupe down. Man, the more I listened to Lupe, the more I became entangled in the web of Lupe that has been my relationship with Lupe. But I would say, I think the first question to everyone is, and I can start this, is what was your relationship like when Lupe started, and what is it like now? Right? I'll kick off. It would say, for me, Lupe's feature on Touch the Sky is one of the really important features, right? I have it up there with like Corrupt on Doggy Dog World, just like, who the fuck is that guy? And I, at that time, I wanted Lupe to be my Kanye replacement. I knew that being Kanye dependent was not going to be good. I knew that I needed somebody else who could do what Kanye did, but better as a rapper. And I was hoping that Lupe would be that person. And I did not get that. But today, this is the happiest I've ever been with Lupe. These last two albums. And I think I don't know. There's a lot of things I could suppose, but I think he's learned how to check himself a little bit and tighten his shot group a little bit. And I think that's the Lupe I love, so that's where I'm at. Mega, what was your relationship like initially? Where is it now?
I agree with you. Like, this is the most I've liked Lupe. As he started to like grow in popularity, I was already deeply kind of independent underground and come from that Keep It Real era that diverged, where underground went one way and then the mainstream went another. And I held that flag for a long time till I'm 40. I've matured quite a bit in that argument. But I think Lupe comes from the kind of like reaction to mainstream rap really becoming full of just like southern shit. There was this resurgence of like backpacker fandom from like Little Brother and things of that nature, but it was also kind of like still trying to participate in the mainstream and kind of have that crossover success. So when I first heard Lupe, I was like, oh, he's really good at rapping. But I gotta say, like, it was probably like Kick Push that was the first
Yeah.
thing that people really tried to put me onto. And I was like, all
Mhm.
right, that's cool, like but at the same time, like, I have been part of like watching independent rap music guys on skate videos for a decade at that time. It was like what, 2006 that Food and Liquor dropped.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I was also, I was still participating in like forums and, being a hip hop dude. And Lupe also had a song that was like, the beat was very similar and the concept was a little bit similar to Soul with Dumb It Down, or I
Oh,
forget,
okay.
Soul's was called Dumb This Down. It dropped, and then like a couple months later we've got the Lupe version of it, and I was like, oh, okay. Everybody on the site was like, it seems as though Lupe's tapped into the underground and getting some of his ideas from there. So automatically I was just kind of against the idea of mainstream guys poaching from the independent scene like happened so often. But I didn't really care enough to hate on Lupe. I just didn't really tap in any more than I did with a lot of mainstream guys. I've heard every Kanye album, I've heard every Jay-Z album since, then, but I just don't go back to those guys in that era nearly as much as I do, I don't know, Cannibal Ox.
Yeah. I mean, to jump off that just with an anecdote, me and Kay are in Maine, right? So we got to interview Chesky, and then Chesky came and did a show here, and Soul was in the crowd, and Chesky like pointed to him and was like, "You guys should love and adore this. For this is the person who put you guys on the map."
Yeah, a main legend. I
Yeah.
mean, wildly influential at the time, and Chesky as well. I mean, I've been listening to Chesky since like 2000. So,
Right.
yeah, I was with those guys. I was with Fake Four, and I was a moderator on Soul's forum. So it meant a lot to see people poaching from the independent scene. And not to say that any of that substantial or even factual, but we all kind of thought that. So
Yeah.
I didn't start liking Lupe until after the Atlantic fiasco.
Yeah.
No pun intended. When I heard Tetsuya in Youth, I was like, all right, he's doing something beyond what I thought he was doing before, and I hope he leans more into it. So I'm a fan now. I like Lupe. I wouldn't say he's on my personal top 20 MCs list. Not anything in regards to his quality, but I like him more now. He just doesn't
Yep.
beat out of Woods
No,
or
and we can talk about that, right? I mean, we'll talk about that eventually, like what separates it. But yeah, Kay, what is your journey?
I mean, I was introduced to, I think maybe around 06, the Kick Push, Food and Liquor. And then I mean, he had like a spark about him. That, and I think that was like the last, I think, the machine, how the machine used to work. Like, I think a lot of people used to get exposed to artists through like MTV and things like that. So I was exposed to Lupe through MTV. And I think he was like the last one of those guys that I was one of the last artists I was really introduced to in that way. So I mean, I was there for the Kick Push, and then I think it was a couple years later, he had a couple singles. It was from The Cool. So I enjoyed The Cool, and then I kind of like fell off of the map a little bit in terms of fandom.
Yeah.
But where I'm at now, I mean, I really enjoyed this last project. And I think it was really, for me, it really, there was a human element in a way that I had kind of been missing for the last, I mean, it's been a decade, almost 2 decades. Wow. Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's an important point, Kay. Lupe has a tenuous grasp on the human element. So we'll get to that. Nick Marsh, talk to
Yes,
me.
sir. Okay, so my introduction to Lupe was Superstar. Um, that was my mom's like favorite rap song. So uh she never listened to rap. She still never listens to rap. But anytime I play a Lupe song, she's like, "Oh, it's Lupe." And it's literally only because of that one song. And she didn't even care about Lupe's parts. She just liked the hook. But since she liked it so much, it like exposed me to more rap because I was also not into rap at the time that came out. So Lupe is like kind of one of the first rappers that I ever really got into, actually. Um, when I really started getting into rap was like around the Lasers era, actually. Um, and I liked Lupe from Superstar. I'd never heard any albums. Uh, I didn't listen to Lasers because I didn't really like The Show Goes On. It was like an okay song, but because I still liked like poppy mainstream stuff at that time. But for some reason that song just never really stuck with me. I still think it's decent, but that one never really worked for me. Um, but yeah, I remember I tried listening to Food and Liquor 2 actually. That was probably the first full album I listened to from him. And I was like, I don't really like this. This isn't this kind of sucks. And then I just kept up with him because it's still Lupe, so I was like, all right. Um the next thing I heard was like a few loose singles. That's to this day, I think some of them still aren't on projects. Like, so when he really bounced back for me was like 2014, because this is right before Tetsuo and Youth. Um, he starts like speaking out more about the whole Atlantic Records situation, and he announces that he's going to be releasing a mixtape called Lost in the Atlantic. Um, this never really, I don't really know if it counts as an official mixtape because what he really did was he just like released a few singles and then called that a mixtape. Um, but this has like some of my favorite Lupe songs ever. Lilies is an incredible song. I love that beat so much. It features a singer named Sierra, I think, or Sarah, and her hook on it. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with Lupe and like poppy singers, but this is one example where it really worked for me. Um, so I love that song. I loved Mazinger. I loved Haile Selassie, which was a song he released at that time. And then I was like, okay, this dude's actually really good. And then Tetsuo and Youth came out. And that was the album that made me a super fan of Lupe because I was like I still remember the first time I heard that album. I was completely blown away. Um, it was just like amazing to me. And I was like, this is going to be the album of the year. There's no way anyone can surpass this. And then Kendrick Lamar came out with To Pimp a Butterfly, and I was like, holy shit, this is the best album I've ever heard.
Right.
Happens.
And then, yeah, so, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was the moment I really became a fan. And then, he kind of fell back off with Drogas Light, but then he bounced back again. So ever since Drogas Wave, it's been smooth sailing.
And that was something that was interesting to talk to people. Everybody has their own kind of divorce point from Lupe. We Secret House Against the Samurai review, you guys were talking about like, I think Jet was talking about like, well, his social media became too much for me. I just shut him down. Like there became a point where Lupe was too much and you just had to cut it off. And everybody had their own kind of tolerance point where it went over the top. But that's a part of his story, you know. Yeah. So, in terms of talking positives, right? If someone was like, what is the biggest positive characteristic of Lupe? What would you say?
Just I think his syntax and diction are just really beautiful to listen to. And it's just like, it's like looking at a beautiful painting. It's just fun to hear for me.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the attention to detail. I mean, it's unparalleled in terms of rapping. I think it's almost unparalleled. I can't think of a rapper that's has more attention to detail in my opinion.
Interesting.
I
Go ahead,
mean,
Megan.
I think that his best trait is undeniably his writing skills. He has that kind of philosophy of hip hop that I think is something rooted in like the first two golden eras about being original, but also having like this level of artisanal craftsmanship that is both a part of being like a combat sport and an artist. So he's able to kind of straddle the line between just saying dope shit really well, but also making it creative and dense. Like he can make some really incredibly dense music, but also you can enjoy it on a surface level. And I think that kind of speaks to the kind of era and part of the music industry he comes up in. It kind of indicates that like there's this level of artistry that these artists want to break out and be considered the best for their talent, but they also still want to meet people who are not as concerned about those parts of the craft. And so you'll have songs where he's like doing things that seem really, really accessible, but at the same time, it's like it can be, Black Thought's verse of the year type of thing. So I just think that he's a really focused writer, and he cares about the craft of hip hop using poetic devices to get ideas across. And I think he's a smart dude. So you get a little bit of everything from him. We were talking about earlier about the dinosaur song, and
Yeah.
I think that also kind of highlights some of his brilliance. Like if you truly understand something, no matter how complex it is, Einstein said you should be able to describe relativity to like a fifth grader, or you should be able to describe complex things to like a 5-year-old if you really understand them. And Lupe can meet all levels of fandom in a way that is unique to him and only a few other artists. Regardless of where he wants to be in that conversation, he does kind of reach the independent underground weirdos, the intellectual insufferable fan base, and also
Yep.
the people who are just like Nick Marsh's mom, who are just like, this is just a really good song. So I think that's his best quality, is his writing is just really an everyman kind of approach, whether you're kind of a genius or fucking just a regular person.
Yeah, I mean that's such a great point. It's such an interesting point because it's the weird part about it is it feels like every shade of that fan base thinks he's theirs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like he's a smart writer guy, like us, like we do, and then like people, grandmas and kids are this is my jam. Like it's, everybody feels like Lupe is their artist, uh, in a way. And for me, the characteristic is the flow, right? And it was,
Hmm.
I think it was the interesting part is we're talking to Nacho Picasso and Televangel. We were talking a week ago, and so we brought up a point. We're talking about Sauce Waka, or no, yeah, doing an album with Alchemist or Derringer or whatever,
Hmm.
right? And we're like, somebody's like, trap rappers sound great over boom bap. Nacho was like, I don't want to hear none of these boom bap dudes over trap beats,
Yeah.
except Lupe. It
Hmm.
was like Lupe is the only exception. I fuck with Lupe over trap beats, and I was like, it's an interesting point. Lupe can kind of spit over whatever, you know. His flow is so dexterous, and that's like why Enemy of the State, the mixtape, is so cool because you get to hear
Yeah.
him hit everything on the radio, and like, wow, this is crazy, yeah.
Yeah. I made a face when you said Lupe can rap over everything, but you're right. He can rap over everything. I just personally don't think he should, uh, because like in preparation for this conversation, I went through his entire discography. The one project I had never heard before was Friend of the People, A Love Story. And those are some of the worst beat selections he's ever made. It's like this like weird like so this is like 2011, and
Yeah.
I personally hold the belief that 2008 to like 2012 was a terrible time for mainstream music, because it was like this sort of like electronic dance music trend that a lot of artists were doing. Like there was Flo Rida and Pitbull, and it seemed like Lupe was like almost trying to get into that lane for a while.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one, but my least favorite Lupe album is Lasers, and it's
Mhm.
because it feels like a fake Kanye album. It feels like you heard Graduation, you heard Stronger, and you were like, "Oh shit, I like indie pop. I can do Modest Mouse. This is cool." And I was like, "Man, nobody needs this shit. Like this is awful."
I
Uh,
think that
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that that was one of the reasons that it took me so long to really enjoy Lupe. It's like throughout his career, it's always been marred by these little things that I just don't really care about. Like Laser specifically is just, I understand he was having problems with Atlantic at the time, but to me that highlights his kind of identity crisis of like what he wanted to be, even during the era where he came out with Kick Push, like you know, that was kind of like this backpacker resurgence. Like he wanted to be like Little Brother, but for the mainstream. And that's
Mhm.
kind of a difficult line to balance because ethically, there's a little bit of a disconnect between wanting to reach those heights and maintain this kind of conscious approach to music. And I don't think that that space really opened up until around 2012, where we started to see mainstream rappers like J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar. And I think that that's where he kind of finds his own footing and becomes himself. But even in 2012 with the food and liquor shit, there was like the issue he had with using the Troy beat, and
Mhm.
his career is often marred by these things of people accusing him of taking, and I think that's because he does pull from so many things. It doesn't always work. Like his rock band stuff or whatever
Oh
they're
my
called, I
God,
forget.
thank you, thank
Like
you.
it's just he's good at rapping, but I mean he's not so like just because he's academically inclined on styles doesn't mean it always works for me. And I actually don't think he like even his new stuff to me, like I think it's really good, but I'm just like, who the fuck is like I don't know. I won't get into that just yet, but yeah, to
So
make the point about his flow.
the rock band stuff was literally, I was checking that out right before this conversation started. That is Lupe's worst album easily. I mean, it's not a solo album, so I guess it doesn't really count, but still, like that was terrible. Really terrible stuff.
Yeah. I this brings me to Lupe theory number one for me, right? Which
Mm.
is listening to the catalog. I was like, I was thinking about Little Brother, right? You brought up Little Brother. I was like, man, I wish Lupe had broken as a rap group. He needs a big poo. He needs
Mm.
somebody to stand next to him and just give it to him raw, like this ain't it, you know?
So my
Mm.
question is, I don't know if you guys know, uh, but by the time I started following Lupe, this guy was kind of out of the picture. What happened to Gemini?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Mm.
I'm not that familiar with all his connections. In fact, right now I was going back to see the features that were on his first album, just
Uh-huh.
considering the idea of like who's around this guy and who is he trying to, when you come out and you drop with like some of the biggest artists of the era, it's like why would you ever listen to having a poo next to you? Like, like
See,
if you already
eh,
feel like you're at that level, it's like, why do I listen to you when I'm trying to be like my contemporaries? Like I'm trying to be Kanye.
and
Right.
Mhm.
to bring to kind of back Dan's point, the Samurai album, this was the first album that Chili, so his manager Chili, I think he had went away for some time. This was the first album that he had been actively involved in, in a couple years and decades. And I saw an interview where he talked about how Chili would push back on some of the production choices for this album. And I think you can kind of hear that this latest album, Samurai, is a lot more focused. And I think it kind of ties to what Dan was saying, having someone be able to push back on Lupe's, ideas kind of really helps him out.
Yeah, maybe like because Lupe was definitely part of a draft class of really important people. Like if there had been a native tonguesy kind of network connectivity, he would have benefited from that greatly,
I agree with that completely. I think one of the issues, like I was pointing out earlier, is just kind of like he seems to be the smartest person in the room, or at least in his opinion, a lot of times. And when you're like that, and you love the craft as much as he does, you're constantly wanting to try to stretch and do all these type of different things, especially considering probably some of his heroes at the time were doing wildly different things. It would have been beneficial for him to have somebody be like, yo, maybe don't do that. Or maybe, lean into one pocket here. Like to me, his identity is kind of all over the place early in his career. He kind of just sounds like everybody to me. Or not everybody, but a lot of people who were doing similar things. Not in terms of like the ability, but just the sound. Like I know he was taken from soul, because like even in a recent interview that he had with some podcasts, he was talking about how battle rappers are doing the same thing over and over again, and he wants to do different things. So they're like, well, who the fuck do you listen to? And he's like, Aesop Rock, Homeboy Sandman, Soul. And I'm just like, all right, well, Soul hasn't made a good album in 20 years. So obviously you're still thinking about how influenced you were by Selling Live Water or Live from Rome 20 years ago. And I think as he's matured, he's kind of maybe come more into himself and found his kind of what he wants to do instead of trying to be everything. So yeah, he could have benefited from that probably. I'm projecting obviously, but yeah.
Is one of the things that frustrated me. There's a bunch of dichotomies that take place in the Lupe verse. Like when I was following Lupe, listening to The Cool, listening to all these albums, I was like, he just kind of kept coming back to the audience being dumb. And I'm like, dog, what did I do? I'm here. I bought the album. What did I do? Like, I don't know what you wanted from me. Like, I'm not your label guy. Yeah. I'm here. I got the album. Why am I dumb? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely there was definitely a disconnect between the empathy that he had for the audience. I think when you have someone who's as brilliant as Lupe, I think it can be kind of hard for them to connect with people and to connect with the audience in that way. So you kind of need, it can become very, as an artist, you can become very insulated. So I think he kind of needed to, develop that empathy for the audience a little bit more and kind of reach outside of the shell that he had created for himself for the past couple of years.
You could really see the resentment that he has in a lot of his music, especially around the time Lasers released. He had like some manifesto that he wrote about like the glamorization of negativity and how he wanted like substance to take the place of popularity and things. And I think that Lupe has always felt like he's on the same level of any of the artists in terms of ability. So why doesn't he get the same credit for them? I think it's weird because he's not in that place of like the conversation for a J. Cole or Kendrick, but he feels he should be there. He's not in that place of a Kanye or a Jay-Z, but he feels like he should be there. And so if people are, he's battle rapping a lot of shit. He's battle rapping against people who are not into his music the same way they are into Kendrick or whatever, because he wants those accolades. And that's a very weird space to be when you're straddling that level of independent artistry, but still wanting to seek that mainstream success. You see artists like Rhapsody is there, right? Rhapsody is there. Kweli has been there. Common has been there, which, you know, there's varying degrees of like their breakout level. Obviously, Common is huge, and so is Quali, but they want their album to get the same accolades as a To Pimp a Butterfly. They want their albums to get the same accolades from mainstream for that, while still really just having a kind of grassroots fan base like independent artistry, and wanting to get the credit for being abstract, experimental, anti-pop to a degree, for a variety of reasons, but they still want to reach that level of like Grammy award winning, even though it's contrary to a lot of the ethics that the underground like supplants in their grassroots fan base. I don't, I see Lupe as just like, I don't see him much different than a Rhapsody. Incredibly talented, one of the best writers, consistently makes some of the best music, but it also kind of lacks some of the things that I really might like, a level of engagement, interest, or importance that some of my other favorites have. Like, he still stands as a bulwark towards the more derivative, tropish, lazy artistry that's so prevalent in mass culture, but he also wants to be a part of that, to be called the best in mass culture. It's different. It's weird.
No, and I think that was much more prevalent in the early part of his career, right? When he was like, as you said, he was listening to soul, but he wasn't going to be in a room with soul, right? He wasn't going to look him in the face. You know, I'm in the Bentley here. I'm not doing that. So he wanted to be seen with the best of the best and chart with the best of the best. But he wanted to outdo them
Yep.
and be a top lyricist. And
Yeah.
the
And
early part of his career, you feel the desperation.
If
and
Kanye
and
can
I
make a
think
weird
the
digital
subtext
album,
of
then I can too. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Here's a lasers.
Yep.
And I think also the subtext, what I think is that he probably will say worked for some of the best as well. If you catch my drift. So he's saying like, look, man, like behind the scenes, like I've worked with these artists, and yet I'm still not to that level of prestige as they are.
I deserve it. Yeah.
Right.
But Rhymefest cannot be Kanye, you know, like it's just it doesn't work like that. Yeah.
And
Nicholas F can't be Drake.
Yep. Go ahead, Nick. What were we gonna say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel like throughout my entire experience as a Lupe fan, I've been trying to understand why he does whack shit sometimes. And I never really, like, you can say, okay, it's Atlantic's fault, but then like, why does Drogas Light happen? And then like when I was listening to it, I was like, maybe this is just like leftovers he had at that time. But then like, it's interesting because you hear, I can't remember what song it is. I think it's Outside on Samurai. He has that line where he's like, he basically says maybe the appeal is that it's not very good. And I feel like that line is maybe an indication of some of the creative decisions he's made in the past.
Right.
Or maybe I'm overthinking it because
No,
like maybe he's just,
I think there's something there. He's antagonistic, right? I mean, you remember the for those of us that remember, the VH1 honors tribute Electric Relaxation, Tribe Called Quest. Lupe gets called and messes up his verse, and when interviewed afterward about it, immediately says, "I didn't even grow up on that, man. I was listening to 8 Ball and MJG," and we're like, "But they're." Paris Tokyo is not an 8 Ball and MJG song.
No.
Like, it's not. You won't find that in their catalog. It's a Tribe song. Like, he's very Tribe influenced, but it's almost like, you remember early Tarantino? He'd give credit to every director except Scorsese because that was the one everyone was comping him against, and he was fighting it. And that's what Lupe does. He fights every narrative immediately, and I think it informs his decision a lot of times and puts him in a bad place with his decision making. Yeah.
That's gross. I forgot about that VH1 shit.
Yep.
I feel kind of like I was wondering, you invited me here because obviously you've seen me discuss music, but and I had been on the on the Discord with everybody, kind of shitting on Lupe, which I've done for 20 years now, and it's like I appreciate his art, but I kind of feel like I'm leaning into a lot of reasons why I think that he's not as dope as other people feel he is, and I don't want that to necessarily be like where I'm coming from, but I've just had this tenuous relationship with his art. Like I I just don't see him the same way that Justin Hunt sees him.
Mhm.
I think one of the reasons I became more endeared to him was him liking Aesop Rock. I just you don't see somebody from that level of like you don't hear Royce the 5'9" or Joe Budden going for somebody like that, even though they claim to be interested in the barsmiths, the unique
Yeah.
stylers, and I love what Lupe stands for in the culture. More or less, I think that one of the reasons I push back on the narrative of him being so incredibly great is because his fan base is fucking insufferable, like a lot of popular artist fan bases. And like I'm perfectly capable of giving him all the credit for being amazing, but I just simply have never seen him at the level of like confident self artistry as I do some of the other artists I listen to. That's not the first thing I look for, but I see identity crisis and just like weebishly weird things about his personality. Like even Samurai's like, dude, like it's a little bit orientalist to me and a little bit weebish how much you lean into this shit. And it's cringe to me in a way, but he's also like, he's kind of one of the artists that changed the perception. Him and like Kanye and Slug and Kid Cudi, who changed the perception of like a superhero being your favorite artist to an everyman being your favorite artist that you could really identify with on a different level. Like we didn't look back at Dell in the 90s and be like, oh yeah, man, we could be like Dell. We kind of did because he was like a skateboard dude, but he was also larger than life. Lupe was like the guy who was just like, oh man, he's just like me. Like I could potentially write and get good enough to join my greats who are giants, and I'm an everyman too. And I think he just kind of don't know himself a lot. And I'm rambling, so let me slow down.
That's oh, good. I mean, it's. I would have to say, and brother, I want to thank like Lupe taught me things, right? Because by the time Lupe was really ramping up, we talk about 2011 lasers, we talk about all that, Enemy of the State. I was this started in 2010, and
Mhm.
so I had already transitioned from listening to music passively to analyzing and writing about it, right? And so Lupe taught me a lesson, right? He was like, because I was like, this is kind of the perfect rapper, right? We talked about his diction, we talked about his flow, we talked about the density of his writing. This is kind of the perfect rapper, and I can feel everyone walking away. I can feel the public backing away. And it was a lesson that like no one wants the professor to lecture them. They want to feel like it's a conversation. They want to feel like they're in a conversation and they've learned something. They don't want to feel lectured at. And at a certain point, Lupe felt like the lecturer.
I think I agree. Uh, even though I want to, for people who are listening and don't know, Lupe Fiasco is actually my favorite rapper of all time. Um, but I actually agree. I think his fans are uh, really, really
Fanatic.
annoying. Yeah, like they're just like annoying. I want to use a more like smarter sounding word, but that's really all I can say. But like for example, a little over 3 weeks ago, Mickey Fax published a video called Decoded Lupe Fiasco's Dumb It Down. And it's one of those videos where they're like doing a lyric breakdown. And I have kind of this love-hate relationship with that kind of stuff. Because on one hand, it's like I'm glad that someone cares enough to do something like this. But on the other hand, it's just like touch grass.
Right.
But you know how I feel about that shit.
Yeah.
I'll start hating on Professor Sky right now and FT
Ooh,
Yeah.
do
Signifier.
it. Do it. I
Yeah.
don't. Yeah, I've never seen any of that dude's videos. But
Well, you know,
I
I'm a
would.
Marxist, so the
I would.
first lens that I view art for is its historical relationships to its modes of production, and
Mm,
you know, hip hop in particular is just a fun case because we see this sharp delineation with the Telecommunications Act, mainstream hip hop's response, the response from the underground, and we see like, you know, like there's this really strange thing that starts happening as people connect and grow, and fandom becomes a part of it, and backpack culture becomes a part of hip hop, is like fandom is a part of hip hop. And a lot of the shit that like artists like Lupe, I see the impact of this deep neoliberalism ideology about like wanting to have this meritocracy, but also still like reap all the benefits of how can I say, we reach a point where mainstream hip hop is one of the most powerful expressions of capitalist realism. And when you have like Lupe Fiasco, who's this deep thinker, he's got songs about, you know, correctional officers and slaves jumping off the ships. When I really get into it, and I start looking about like what exactly is your ideology, he's exactly as liberal as any of the other guys. And so like for me, if you want to do lyric deep dives and make him out to be this genius, I just don't fucking see it almost at all. Like I understand you're doing cool acronyms with love and hate and listen to things backwards and shit, but I really just don't see the brilliance in any way that's different than some of his contemporaries. And I don't like those type of breakdowns at all. They're wildly ahistorical, weird, and romanticizing and mythologizing things that are just strange to me.
Yeah, if you were asked to describe, okay, if you were asked to describe Lupe's philosophy, you'd struggle because the ideas don't always cohere.
His
Well,
manifesto is very much like we want to change race and class and all these things, and like I'm like, oh, that was a good look for you for that year, I guess. I don't know. People were trying to tell me about the samurai stuff and the Amy Winehouse thing, and I was like, that may be true. Maybe I'm just not getting it. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Because I'm listening and trying to get it, but he also just raps to rap sometimes. Sometimes these rhymes are just put together to rhyme, and it's like lyric breakdown on shit like that. I'm like, okay, I mean, it rhymed with that. It's Farrah Fawcett. I mean, come on, water faucet. I
Well,
get it. You're rapping a rap.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Let it be that.
sometimes the message, like the message is almost too intricate. So instead of delivering the meaning or message that he's trying to deliver, he makes it almost too intricate where you just completely lose the message. You may appreciate it on a technical level, like, oh shit, that was kind of clever how he did that. But then when you do that, at the same time, you kind of lose the message of what he was trying to say. And
Yeah.
I mean, I find that happens. I think he does a better job on Samurai, but that's happened a lot to me in the past. I think listening to him.
Yeah, the comparison with Aesop Rock is they always kind of worked better with like telling a story from a little bit of a distance, right?
Mhm.
Kick Push is an amazing song. I love Kick Push. It's a very romantic song. But like when he was confronted by skaters, he was like, I was trying to tell your story to the world. Like, I wasn't saying I live that, but he's
Mhm.
most emotionally clear when he's not in the story. And that's a problem. And it's something, by the way, we're talking about Aesop Rock. I think Aesop Rock resolves that with Skeleton. What
Yeah.
from Skeleton on, he can dial in and say, this is what the fuck happened to me.
Aesop is my favorite MC of all time. So if you ever do a scouting report on him, let me join.
Yes.
But you know, like Nick, I don't look at Lupe like you see some of the ravenous like Eminem fandoms who nothing can do is wrong and everything is genius and complex. I think that it's like to like the best form of fandom is to be critical of your artist. And if Nick came on here and was like everything Lupe's done is great and the best, I'd be like, all right, Nick, fucking calm down. You know what I mean? It's good to have I don't like some Aesop Rock shit, but he's been consistently on my top 5 for 25 years now, since like 99. And like when it comes to Lupe, I'm all for people loving him. I understand. I see why. It's just that he misses the mark for me personally because of some things that don't necessarily have to do with the level or quality of his work. He's amazing. Like his last two albums to me are probably the most accessible in his catalog. I feel like Drill Music in Zion, just really good, simple topic. Like Drill Music in Zion is like, this topic's pretty simple to get across. He does it well. It's not as weird or a like 9-minute track about him barring out. It's easy to consume. Samurai has some of like the BPM range from that album is just like stuck in this pocket of jazzy shit. It's like really just music for everybody, and he's doing a better job at that. Maybe Drill Music in Zion is his skeleton, where things just become a little bit more dialed in and refined, and he kind of knows his pocket a little differently. I don't know. I've liked him. I like Tetsuo and Youth is my favorite album from him, but Droga's Wave, Droga's Light, kind of a slog. Drill Music in Zion, Samurai, they're all right. Yeah. I don't go back to Drogas. Drogas Wave is pretty good, but Drogas, wait, Drogas, which one is first, Light or Wave?
Light came first, and it's the whack one.
Okay. Then wait.
With the patois, there's a lot of patois going on.
Wave has patois on like one track, and then maybe like some like speech from in the background, but not like rapping it. But there's one song where he's rapping with patois.
It's another thing about Lupe is like, because he has a hungry mind. We talked about how intelligent he is, but because he's got a hungry mind, I joked on the Rap Music Plug Discord that he's fetishes on fetishes, that he's like a lasagna of fetishes, and I think that is, and it's his hunger to know things and to learn things, and the samurai thing goes a long way. It goes a long way back, and it's sure it's born out of the respect he has, but it's fetishy after a while.
Yeah, it's a bit Orientalist to me, man. It's a bit weird to me. Like I'm out here in Japan, and like it's I don't know. It's just it hits different for me when people are like, I know anime is like a big part of pop culture, and a lot of these things come from that, and they're born of places of like adoration and respect. But sometimes it gets a little bit weird to me, and I don't know how to explain it other than the fact that like my spider sense starts tingling about it being cringe. Like, the lasagna, like Lupe is like a lasagna MC. There's like a lot of really dope layers, and it works together sometimes, but sometimes it's like, yo, did you put broccoli in the fucking lasagna?
Yeah.
People who have been following me for a long time will remember a point where anytime someone brought up anime, I would be like, man, fuck out of here with that weeb shit. And that's all I wanted to say about that. But yeah, no, but I agree. Lupe does have like a weird fascination with Japan and like that culture. One of his first features ever that I listened to was on a J-pop song, actually, by an artist called Double. I can't remember what the name of the song was, but it was on an album that's called Reflex. And it was like a regular J-pop song. It wasn't anything special, but yeah. And then there's like the Paris, Tokyo stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, he's definitely been in that space for a while.
So go ahead.
I was just gonna say I find it like cringe at worst and woefully uninspired at best. It's not a huge like I'm not going to put demarks on his scorecard for that, but it's a little weird to me.
Yeah, we're not shocked or offended. It's just like, if you're always if you're always doing something that's that out of it, we're just like, what's going on? But
is it like branding at this point? Like the shirts that he like the shit he's wearing in the samurai video is like some Japanese place, I guess. I don't fucking know. I've been in Tokyo for 12 years. I have no idea, but is it branding?
one of the weirdest things Lupe has ever said is that he's more culturally Japanese than African or some shit like that.
What?
Mm.
Or
See,
I don't know if he said Japanese. He either said Japanese or Asian. He's like, I'm more culturally Asian than African.
Boom.
the fuck does that mean, bro? Wow, man. I don't like that. But
Yeah.
you know, I'm a huge I'm what I would call a hater. I like to hate on a lot of shit. You know, the people I love,
Same.
I've had like an ethics behind my enjoyment of music for about as long as I've had like enjoyment being the first thing. Like I listen to Drake, I'm like, oh, this is good. Like he's rapping, the beat sounds fine, but I would never listen to this if I wasn't in this Forever 21 right now. Like some
Yeah.
things I just don't rock with because they're fucking gross and weird. And I didn't hear that Lupe said that shit. To me, that is gross and weird.
Yeah.
Deeply on some really wild liberal shit. And when I say that, I'm saying liberal not in the sense of like Democrats. I mean like ideologically conservative Democrat, that weird Western liberalism of just ugh. I live in Japan and I would never be like, I feel more Japanese. I've been here 12 years. It's like, ugh. I don't
Yeah.
know.
To any of our listeners, if you wake up feeling Japanese culturally or wake up feeling Asian culturally, don't be ashamed of yourself. Email Nick Marsh your thoughts. Compile all of it, you know.
Me and Nick Marsh are both like fucking Africans here that look like we could be like they're gonna make us take off our shoes at the damn airport. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like we're both half black guys, and like man, I could fucking never. That to me, that's just Lupe. You've I'm glad I didn't hear about that before we started recording and we got into it halfway through. I don't
Yeah.
like that shit.
Yeah. I mean, I still don't understand what the fuck he was trying to say with that. It's again, it's one of the weirdest things he's ever said.
He wants to separate himself from like things that he figures is dumb a lot. And maybe it
Yeah.
has to do with how the presentation of so much popular black culture has these like things about it. He's sometimes beyond like yelling at the audience on some Bill Cosby respectability politics, pull your
Ooh.
pants up and stop acting so niggerish. And it's just
Yeah.
weird to me when people do that shit. Like I understand that you know, you can critique a culture for some of the habits that you don't agree with, but a lot of that shit, because it comes from this really weird and liberal place, he's critiquing the people instead of the systems that created that thing. And I think that that might be another. I'm projecting, but that might be another example of his deep identity issues that I thought that I saw throughout his career. And to hear that kind of just punctuates it a little bit more for me, bro.
Or
You're
what like what he'll do sometimes is he'll try and mediate a big important conflict, but he'll do it like my dad did. Like it's all y'all's fault, you know? And like he had a breakdown, I forget which song it was, but he was talking about the conflict in Israel, right, with Palestine. And he's like, shame on you, Palestine, for terrorism. That's bad. But also shame on you, Israel. You know why this is starting. And then he just kind of winked and walked away. And I was like, what is this?
I'm telling you, bro, it's this fucking enlightened centrism that he has on this. Like, I see both sides. I'm on some intellectual shit. I be getting that from his music, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't fucking like. There's something that always bothers me about cats like that. And again, Spider Sense was tingling. I feel vindicated.
Yeah. I was talking to my friend. He asked me, there's this guy named David Rowe who runs a YouTube channel about like music discussion. And he called me last night. And he was like, what do you think about Lupe hating on Kendrick? And I was just like, you know, I don't know if Lupe and I would get along because he just seems like an asshole.
Tough hang.
Yeah.
Kay Lupe was a guest on Dylan Green's podcast, Cinema
I
Sci.
already know what you're about to say.
And the first thing I said in his Discord was, "Yo, he would not like me, and he would not like State of the Game. Like this is not, this is Lupe would not enjoy it here." And so I free him of that responsibility.
Yeah, I watched that same episode, and there's a moment where Dylan asked him, he's like, how did you feel when you watched that Amy Winehouse documentary. And then Lupe is just like, well, I made a whole album about it. And I'm like, Brad, come on, you know what he was trying to ask.
Yeah. He's that way. I mean, it goes back to the emotional thing, right? Like, so
Yeah.
this is one of my big problems on the scouting report for Lupe is emotions, right? Firstly, and Nick knows more about this stuff than I do. Give me some songs where Lupe's talking about how wrong he was.
Hmm.
Are there? I mean, I can't think of a Lupe song that's like, I fucked up. What is his song cry?
You know, yeah. So there's this like type of album that I always want from an artist. I put this idea out there. You guys may think this is a terrible idea and hate it, but I was like, what if Doom, before he died, released his most personal album ever? He took off the mask and just released a Daniel Dumile album, and we just learned everything about Doom. That's the kind of shit I want from Lupe. Because, like, I feel like even when he gets personal, it's never from his own perspective. Or, sorry, when he gets emotional, it's never from his own perspective. Like, he'll do the Alan Forever, which is a very heartwarming song. It's a beautiful song, but it has nothing to do with Lupe himself, you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Also, that song that they used, Troy, like the issue was that that's a deeply personal track.
Yeah.
And what was it? Around My Way, Freedom Ain't Free, something like
Yeah,
this.
it was about like
Yeah.
the treatment of well, I don't know if the whole thing was about this, but one thing he mentioned in it was like the first thing he mentioned was the treatment of indigenous people in the US. And that was like his general jumping off point for that.
I can imagine a Lupe 444 album, but at
Mhm.
this point I might feel it was derivative too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it it's just a weird thing. Like I think that he must think very highly of himself, but it happens in his fan base too. Their subreddit, each subreddit has like a title for the people who are on that specific subreddit, and his are called Harvard grads. Like, you're not a Harvard grad because you listen to Lupe.
He
It's
has
just
a he has
weird.
a he has a line about that where he's like, it's hard being a Lupe fan, go to Harvard to be a Lupe stan. And that's like Justin Hunt's always putting that line.
Hilarious.
I'll hate on Justin Hunt right now too.
I love Justin Hunt. I'm not gonna lie. Shout out to
Yeah.
Justin Hunt.
Okay.
Hey, I just don't listen. Yeah, as you can see, I'm pretty much a hater of all things popular. For whatever reason, I guess I don't fucking know. Yeah.
I understand. Kate, what would you say? How would you describe Lupe's relationship to his emotions and directing his emotions in songs?
I mean, I feel like I think he did a better job on this project. But I think there is a tension from me. I think this, why I kind of like this album so much is because I think there's been a tension in his career between being an artist in terms of being like there's a funny thing, like if you go on like I listened to the album on Apple Music, and it's got the lyrics to it, and at the end of the lyrics it's got like the song credits, and so on the song credits he has a song written by, and then he has his real name, PKA, professionally known as Lupe Fiasco. And so for me, I think there's been a tension, like, yes, I'm an artist in terms of, I think he sees rapping as his career in some sorts, but I think he also loves the craft of rapping in terms of, sitting down, coming up with these stories, coming up with these narratives, coming up with these like very intricate things. And I think there's always been a tension between that, like, okay, like I got to deliver something that's going to, get me paid and further my career. But at the same time, these are kind of where my interests are at the moment. So he hasn't quite figured out how to balance those two sides of himself.
Yep, that comes through. So my theory to kick to everybody
Okay.
is this is I think this would be my most important theory. I got a lot of theories in my head, but this is the one. So I checked. You know me. I have a running Google Doc of my favorite rappers of all time. I'm always updating it. It's like 210 at this point. I just added Chino XL. I'd forgotten Chino XL. All right.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Yeah.
But Lupe is 53 on that list, right? Number 7 on that list is Ka. Because and you could definitely like Ka can't flow like Lupe, right?
Yeah.
But what Ka can do is properly emotionally frame his music.
Mhm.
The emotional intelligence that he has in him comes through in his art. So he knows what the emotional center of the song is, what the emotional center of the verse is, what the emotional center of the line is.
Mm.
Ka has guest verses that are more emotional than anything Lupe's ever written.
Yeah.
Because he's that centered on that skill. And I think that's the biggest lacking part of Lupe to me.
There's this guy in my Discord server named Jim, and he's very sarcastic, and he's never really so basically, if you say something's dope, he'll be like, that song is shit, and he won't listen to the song even before saying that.
Right.
He just likes messing with people like that. And I feel like he seems to be like in a similar boat to us, where he's very disgusted by like pseudo intellectual stands who really glorify that type of rap. One of the copy pastas he sends is man, I listen to this shit, it's not even that lyrical. I mean, this shit is nowhere near a Ka or a Billy Woods or a Lupe. And it's just like, first of all,
Mm.
there's Lupe stands out in that list. I mean, they're all they're all different artists, but Lupe, he doesn't really fit with them to me.
Right.
Not only because it's different, very different sonically, but just like, I don't know, something. It seems like obviously Lupe is very intentional with what he does, but I don't know. I just think Ka and Woods are better at executing overall like themes, I guess, and concepts.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that Lupe isn't amazing at that stuff too, because like Drogas Wave, I think, is a damn near perfect album. But I don't know. I don't, something about Lupe, and it's also their flows. Like Lupe has a much more accessible flow than Ka or Billy Woods to me.
Sure.
He's just more accessible in general because of the style of music he makes to me.
Indeed, he comes from a conventional rhyming background, like many of the people of the golden eras. You're from the first golden era to the second to the third. That rhyme style, he's just turned it up to a hyper degree and made it even more complex. But he places an emphasis more on the poetic devices and utilizing language to create puzzles before eloquence. Before being simplistic. He also, like Billy Woods, comes from an outsider hip hop tradition. Like literally his OG is Vordel. And Vordel,
Yeah.
what he was doing, was even strange to MF Doom fans. It was a unique kind of outsider musician style, and their emphasis is on maintaining that integrity regardless of where it takes their music. Whereas Lupe is taking from the past and always trying to be on the forefront of things using only the past, like that formula. Like the jazzy beats on Samurai are extremely conventional. Like that, those things could have been type beats of like 90s hip hop type jazzy beat type beats.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff. They just, he doesn't, he on that list, like you place him on, put him against even a Black Thought. They're all doing very different type of things, but the closer those artists are to success in the mainstream, you'll see more closeness with Lupe than you will the
Yeah,
successful
I
artists.
had a question. Why were Woods and Ka, like Sedano's list is 200 strong?
Yeah.
Why were those two specifically the ones that you compared Lupe to?
Well, that was Jim. That was Jim's list. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, Jen, okay.
So it
Why
wasn't
do
even
you
Jim.
think that
It
he's
was,
grouped in that same category as those two?
to be honest, I think the person who originally made that comment is probably someone who follows a lot of hip hop discussion and just saw that people are always praising the three of them. Like, even though they're very different, like they probably saw, oh, people are always saying Lupe is one of the best. People are always saying Ka is one of the best. People are always saying Woods is one of the best. So, okay, these are the best.
Those are the intellectual man's hip hop artists. Aesop
Yeah.
is on that list too, of like, oh, if you don't get this, you're not smart enough to really get it. Like
Yeah.
that's a big theme.
Exactly. That's
There's
what
a
it
big
is.
theme with a lot of those guys, where it's a little bit different than Eminem, because he tends to be like a transgressive artist who says edgy things, and these other guys, Woods, Ka, Lupe, Aesop Rock, Decca, a lot of these people see these guys as like brilliant intellectuals. People have literally called Decca the prophet of our time in my channel, like in comments. Like they think they're
I mean,
smarter for listening to them.
Yeah.
to me, it seems like, I think, and the reason I question the comparison, because I think Lupe sees himself as a battle rapper. Like Lupe is more similar to Eminem to me than he is to Ka.
Totally.
Yeah.
Agree.
The
Totally.
comparison I would make, I think the closest to Lupe would be someone like Kambada. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him.
Yeah, Kimbata. I know Kimbata.
Yeah, he's like the song Grand Number Theorem. That song is very Lupe to me. It's a little more ridiculous. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's not too ridiculous for Lupe, but like
Well,
that's the type of shit.
25% Kimbata, 75% Chance the rapper, and get Lupe. Could I mix
And
that?
what's the element of chance when you say 25%? What is chance
because
rapper?
me and you talked about this, Kay. My big problem with Chance was the intentional cutesiness, the wearing the high waters when he was 30 years old, being like, I'm skipping class. And you're like, dog, you
His
ain't doing
his
that. Like,
his
so
double XL freshman freestyle
yeah.
is that's exactly what that made me think of.
He still rapped in like young cutesy guy voice for so long until he couldn't carry it off. Like there was a sense that when Chance broke, he was being the character we wanted him to be the antithesis of Chief Keef, right? The
Yeah.
antithesis of the scary Chicago drill wave. Like he was the adorable one we needed, you know.
Yeah,
and
I
so
never thought about that. That's true.
Lupe
I
basked
mean,
in that a little
he's
bit.
fucking Obama. He's safe, happy, everlasting, page-long candy code, accessible, still
Yeah.
black.
But I mean, I think to the Eminem comp, right? I mean, I love that you said that, Kay. He's more like Eminem. To me, what we have to bring back in the conversation when Eminem fans start yelling at us about respecting him as a lyricist is that lyricism isn't just like killing the crossword puzzle.
Mhm.
Lyricism isn't just knowing the words and knowing how to use them. It's it being emotionally vested in what you're doing. And Elzai finds a way to do that. Like, so why can't you?
Yeah. A lot of people that place those emphasis on like poetic devices, it's kind of a weird camp to me to come from. It does come kind of from this philosophy. I mean, it seems to come from like this kind of idea or philosophy about hip hop being also a like like a sport, like a combat
Mhm.
sport,
Mhm.
which is, you know, competitive and you're supposed to be the best. Whereas some of the artists like Ka or the outsider musicians, they're making art. They're, of course, wanting to be the dopest. You want to be good at what you do. And we all kind of come from the tradition of like, your pen should be dope. You should talk fly. You should have dope, you know what I mean? Be a dope person and say dope things in a great way. And some people seem to lose track of the idea that like hip hop is not just about like complex rhymes and multi-syllables. Like you go back and listen to fucking Prodigy, half the time he wasn't even fucking rhyming. You know
Right.
what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like there's a beauty and eloquence in being able to get things off. Just like a simple line can have a ton of meaning. You know, there's beauty in a deadbolt if you frame it right. And the cats that tend to care about the complexity of raps, those are your cats that are most often trying to make apples and oranges compete against each other. You want
Mm-hmm.
to say, oh, Ka's doper than you know fucking Lupe because of this, or you know Lupe's doper than Chief Keef because of this. And it's
Yeah.
like this is all art too, and you can enjoy things for different reasons. It's like sometimes it's keep it simple stupid is the best way, and a lot of times like people who are able to turn their emotions into simple lines, like you know, Songcry, you talk about Scarface, man, that shit is more a letter than it is a rap, and it's just fucking one of the most beautiful things ever put on wax. And I don't know if Lupe has that. He has some really interesting stuff about prisoners and things, but I mean, I read theory. Like, come on.
The reason that Ghostface and Scarface mean so much to us is because as geniuses they were at just killing shit, they were also raw with their emotions. They were
The
telling
realest
us
thing you ever
shit that
heard. Yeah.
telling us shit we would hear and say, I would never fucking say that. I could never. It's true. I believe it. I've been through it, but I would never fucking say that. Like that's the power of that shit, and that's the missing part I think for Lupe. The other missing part that hey he got. I don't know if you heard Nick Marsh the interview with Dylan Green. He got very defensive about soundtrack and about
Yeah.
people needing to respect soundtrack, and people should respect soundtrack, but you don't need to be that monogamous with soundtrack. You can make friends. You
Mm-hmm.
can like, come on, man. Like I'd love to hear a Messiah music Lupe. Just fucking see what
Right.
that's like, you know?
Yeah. I think that's also part of the reason that I kind of get like, I don't really care to listen to Lupe all that much is like his production choices don't always speak to me. Even though they're good, I'm just like, all right, you know, I'd rather listen to August Fanon and Vic Spencer, even though Vic Spencer doesn't dope as he is, he's not doing things as complex as Lupe. I just, you know, like it
Yeah.
works better sometimes.
So just to speak on the emotion thing one
Yep,
before
yep, do
I
it.
talk about soundtrack, that's like probably my biggest critique of Lupe is I don't think Lupe could ever make a God Loves Ugly. You know, uh, I don't think he could make. I don't know why I'm just thinking of Rhyme Sayers artists right now, but I don't think he could make By the Throat uh,
Right,
by
right. Idea.
E&A.
I
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He so that's that one thing. And then like the thing where Lupe says he doesn't view Kendrick as the greatest lyricist or whatever, or one of the greatest. Uh, I feel like Lupe downplays the importance of emotional impact, which is something I've said before publicly. Uh, People did not like when I said that. They said that I was mischaracterizing or misrepresenting Lupe's point or whatever. I don't think I was, but some people, you know, Lupe fans get very defensive. That's one thing I've
Right.
noticed.
Sure.
But yeah, as far as the production goes, uh, I love the stuff with soundtrack. I am a big fan of Lupe's production generally, aside from some projects. Like, it's weird because like I either love the production on his albums or like I barely like a single beat on it. It's like a very hit or miss thing. Um, the last few projects have all been really great to me. But yeah, Lupe doesn't really, he doesn't rhyme over weird beats, which is kind of sad and disappointing a lot of the time. I want to
His
hear him over weirder shit.
collaboration, excuse me.
No, you're good.
I was just saying, I want to hear him over weirder shit.
His collaboration that he did with Aesop Rock in like 2022 for that skateboard skate park type of thing.
Yeah.
That shit was dope, and I think it was a Blockhead beat.
It
Yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah. I love that. Great song.
I really would like to see. I want to see him like. The reason I think his last two albums are really good is because I think he found a pocket for what he's always been, which is like an artist towards convention, an artist towards golden era style boom bap hip hop, more than he is like an abstract experimental avant-garde artist. And I think he's doing well with that. But I think that if he was to go in the other direction, he probably needs to move past Soundtrack, because Soundtrack sound is so conventional compared to the kind of the exuberance and different forms and styles of hip hop that actually are out there. Like Lupe is, like you were saying earlier, Dano, like he's really dope at riding different types of beats. Imagine him over like some JPEG Mafia type of shit, even, or you know, the Blockhead shit is just simple, flowery, eloquent, but Lupe over like Televangel, man, I mean,
that
come on, it would be crazy. It'd be crazy.
Yeah,
and
I don't
that's
even
what I
think
want
it.
more of.
I don't even think it has to be someone that's like super like avant-garde with their production. Like it can just be like some like just a new name would just freshen things up. Like
Right. If it was like Kenny Beats did
Or
like,
like-
2 of the tracks, you know, and
like I was thinking Killer Kane. Yeah.
There's quite a few. Like you know, I say the same thing about Aesop Rock too. Like I think his production's really good, but I would like to hear him over somebody who is not Blockhead or him or
Yeah, I
Tobacco.
feel the exact
you know, like,
same way.
yeah, I
Well-
just think that I'd like Lupe to freshen up the barcode a little bit with the production. I think that that's kind of one of the components that's missing a little bit for me. Like I really like when he gets into kind of the experimental shit, 9-minute songs, incredible. And I like when he's on some like regular shit, but I kind of want him to go further in either direction. Yeah,
that makes
sound wise.
sense. I mean, Kay, do you consider Lupe an example of someone whose production is too clean?
Yeah, and I think not production is too clean, but I think I've made this point before, like in a show previously, about, you know, like the great artists, you look at their discography, it's not production wise as insulated as Lupe's has been.
Right.
You know, like, you know, you go to, I don't want to call Kendrick his nemesis, because that's not what it is. But you look at Kendrick's discography, look at everyone who he's worked, look at all of the producers he's worked with.
Right.
And I think, you know, if he really, and I don't know if it's necessarily a control thing or a comfort thing, or maybe he's like, maybe the Atlantic, you know, the whole fiasco with that kind of burned him a little bit in terms of working with other outside artists. I think if he were to open up his sound and really try to look in other directions, I think it would do wonders for him.
Agreed.
I agree. And one thing I did notice is that I don't think there's a single soundtrack beat on Lasers. So maybe he's a little like disturbed by how much pushback he got on that album, and like he's comfortable with soundtrack. He knows that it works, so Lupe takes risks, but I think at this point that's one area where he's not as he's not as bold with it.
Yeah.
Right. But then again, I also think there's also like and I heard a lot of, like, in terms of the samurai, I heard a lot of themes, but one of the things I kept thinking about was, why is he rapping? Who does he rap for? Like, what's his motivating factor for rapping? And
right.
I some of the things like that could kind of explain why his production is so insulated, is because he's not creating music for an audience. I think he just genuinely likes to, I think he really genuinely likes to make raps and rap songs, and he just happens to release it because that's how he makes his living.
Right.
Hmm.
Well, and as an MIT professor as well. Shout out to him.
Yeah, yeah.
I push back on that idea a little bit. I think that it's kind of the inverse. Like, I think that he feels his target demographic
Mhm.
is so wide that he doesn't really know what to do, and he's constantly trying to hone in on his target demographic, and
Hmm.
he just realizes like, oh, I make like hip hop music. Here goes my best version of it. Um, People are doing dense shit. Let me do a little bit of that and see how it works out. People are doing weird, electronica shit. Let me see how that works out. I think that he's gotten a little bit more confident in the last few years. And I think
Yeah.
that he just feels like his demographic is like the same as Black Thoughts. And I think that he feels like his demographic is like the same demographic that Rhapsody is looking for, minus like the women. Like they make the exact same kind of music to me.
Right.
Rhapsody and Lupe. So
And I think
Cool.
that's to like to build on both of your points, right? I think the more, we talked about early Lupe like clamoring for the spotlight and maintaining that spotlight,
Mhm.
right? These last two albums to me, Drill Music and Zion and Samurai, are great because it feels like he let go of that a little bit.
Yeah.
Let go of that dream of I will run this world. And now he's like, okay, well, if I'm not going to run the world, then what's important about making this album? And it's a little more grounded that way.
Yeah. And
at
I
the
think if you listen to the Samurai song, he has the metaphor. He goes, Amy, like he uses Amy, and she says like she's rapping outside of the opera house.
Yep.
So I think how do I say this? I think there was an insecurity in Lupe's. I think as an artist, Lupe was insecure.
Mm.
Maybe still is. Maybe that kind of what drives him. I mean, I don't think a secure person could make something so intricate as Lupe does, because that drives him. But nonetheless, I think what he really wants is the tension. As I said, is he wants to be in that opera house. He wants to be gawked at. He wants to be amaze people with his talent, and he wants to be fawned over. But at the same time, he knows that he's really not going to be able to get that. He's not going to get people. He's not going to be able to get people to fawn over him like he would like.
Yeah, that makes me think. I've kind of I get the sense that Lupe has always felt like he's not getting the respect he deserves,
Mhm.
and like he's always demanding respect, and he is always trying to prove nobody's better than him. And I think that's the main thing that drives him.
yeah, I agree with all that. I think we touched on his insecurity earlier too. Like, I feel like he's getting more comfortable though. These last two albums, they're very high concept. Drill Music and Zion was supposed to be done in like a 24-hour like burst, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
wrote and put all that together. Like the goal was like immediacy, and
Mhm.
as a form of artistry, that's like a flex on so many different levels.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
with this one, it's really or at least the way that it was presented to me and what people told me what to expect from it is really high concept. It's really thoughtful, and it's also kind of outside of what anybody else is doing. Like
Mhm.
who would think to frame an album in that way? And I'm not sure. I didn't pick up on all of the, connecting the dots. I guess I'm not a bar whisperer enough to understand all the Amy Winehouse shit, but like it seems like he's in a good place. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping that a lot of the things that we're sitting here fucking diagnosing his psyche with on, you know what I mean? Like we're fucking like trying to hone down who the fuck this guy is. Like, regardless of all of that shit, like I'm kind of like more on board with Lupe now than I ever have been. And I'm hoping
100%.
that I'm hoping that he kind of continues because I'm starting to feel like he's getting there. He's moving beyond wanting to be um you know, Eminem lyric like levels of respect lyrically, or Royce the 5'9". He's moving beyond wanting to just be a battle rapper and is settling into maybe his samurai mode, like a well polished blade ready for anything, but also living a life of tranquility and trying to find himself. So maybe that's the deeper themes that he's getting towards.
And see why I love this album is that and I think you're right. I think he's in a great place now, but I think there's a level of empathy. I think now he's at the point of his career where he's really started to like diagnose, like, look, man, like I know I'm insecure, and I think he's starting to resonate with the up and coming artists. So he's kind of sees himself as an elderman. Like I think it was the second song on the album. I forgot what it is. Maybe even Palaces. I think that's the third song, Palaces, where he's like, look, man, like, as you know, I'm an older artist. I've been in this game for a long time, like 20 years now. I see what these young artists are going through, where they want to be, they really love the craft and they want to be great artists, but they know that that's not going to get them paid. And they know that no matter how great they are, they may not get the shine. And as an elder artist, that really resonates with me. And here's how I've worked through that. And I think that angle has been like really humanizing for him in terms of my perception for this project.
I'm with you. I think the best way to enjoy Samurai is to let go of all of the trappings, right?
Yeah.
Let go of the Samurai references, let go of the Winehouse references, just enjoy him rapping his ass off.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I going back listening to the catalog, I think Tetsuo and Youth is probably his best album to me. And for me,
I agree.
His second best album and my favorite album is Drill Music in Zion, and I'll tell you why. Here's my pitch, right? Drill Music in Zion is the only album where I could hear how much the violence hurts him.
Yeah.
You can hear in those songs, you can hear how hurt he is by it, by the violence. And there's almost, I don't know, man, like Philip Marlowe detective novels with Raymond Chandler. What everybody said was he never said how he's feeling. He never said the emotions, but there were these moments of implication of emotion that meant everything to the reader. And so that's Drill Music in Zion is all that. You can hear we connect what he's saying to his tone of voice. Very hurt by it.
I would rank my favorites from Lupe the same. I think Tetsuo is kind of like his magnum opus, his To Pimp a Butterfly, if you will. And I think that Drill Music in Zion is kind of like Damn for me. Like, even though I love To Pimp a Butterfly, I go back to listen to Damn a lot just because like it resonates with me. It just works as good music that you don't have to overthink, but if you want to, you're like, oh shit. And these last two albums, you don't have to go looking for the pieces of the puzzle to enjoy them. Like, I feel like it's almost like a prerequisite when it comes to Tetsuo and Youth. Like, you can't listen to a 9-minute rap song just like chilling, you know what I mean? Like, you have to kind of pay attention and try to figure things out and put it together. These last two albums are much more conventionally just good music than his other works for different reasons. Yeah, more digestible. That's a good way to put it. Yeah,
I'm with it. Okay, final thoughts on this before we go to recommendation corner?
No.
I'm ready. So recommendation corner, I did a crazy thing, everybody, because I'm trying to organize my thoughts here. Now, I obviously have my Google Doc of my favorite albums of the year, but that's not enough. I've created a playlist. It's called AOTY Potential. It's albums that other people love as their favorite album. And it's one song from every album. So it's basically a map to lead me back to albums that I haven't listened to enough that are important. 26 songs linked to 26 separate albums that I'm keeping track of, on top of the ones that I actually love. It's a very Dan thing to do. So
I like that. That's dope.
So one of the things we did, like I threw out to my people, I was like, look, I haven't really been loving rock music this year. The St. Vincent shit was whatever, the Vampire Weekend was whatever, like put me on. And so I'm picking through those suggestions, adding them, single songs on my list, tracking them down. The first one that blew me away was called Funeral for Justice. Band from Niger. Shout out to Niger. If you live in Maine, you get to see white people look at Niger on the map and start sweating. Because it's 1G away, Kay. It's 1G away. Anyway, I shouldn't even. Anyway, Umdu Mokhtar.
I'm rocking with you 100%. Keep it going.
Umdu Mokhtar, MDOU, MOCTAR. There's two different words. Fucking badass. It's just a badass album. Yeah, it just reminds me of like maybe you remember like Santana's brother had a group called Malo, that was just a killer ass psych rock band. It's almost like that, but Niger. So I love that shit. Shout out to the people who are suggesting stuff. I'm gonna go through all that shit because I'm nerdy. But yeah, the other one we booked. Can I brag about a booking, Kay?
Yeah, do it.
Starlito, one of my favorites from the mixtape era. Nashville. He put out an album called Imposter Syndrome. He's just as Starlito as he's ever been, fearlessly exposing himself.
I haven't heard that name in a
emotionally
while.
to people. And he's awesome. And this is just such a Starlito album. Don Tripp's on it, everybody's on it, just having a good time. So check out Imposter Syndrome. Man, nobody eviscerates themselves quite like Starlito. Yeah. So those are my two picks. What do you got, Marsh? What are you rocking with?
Okay, so before I say this, I just want to clarify one thing. I said something about touching grass earlier. I hope nobody who's listening gets offended by that. I was just saying that as someone who is also a total dork, and I need to touch grass, so I feel like I could say that. But anyway, I knew you were gonna ask this question about like recommendations, and I was thinking ahead of time. There are a few options I could go with.
Do it.
I think I'm gonna go with my album of the year at the moment, actually. Oh wait, is this supposed to be something you've never heard of?
No.
Whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
Okay,
man.
bet. Earlier in this episode, I talked about basically like the 444 type album where they're like being totally personal. Sleep Sinatra just gave me that. It's his most personal album ever. Like I was not ready for that. It's incredible. One of the best albums I've ever heard in my life, to be honest. Sleep Sinatra is my favorite rapper right now, and that album is fucking incredible.
The Spirit of Baldwin Avenue?
Yes. Yeah.
I love
Sorry, I
that
didn't say the name.
So great.
It's so good.
Yeah, I'm so proud of Sleep for just being who he is and growing how he has. What do you have? Is anything else? Are you limiting to one? You can do as many as you want.
Okay. Can I do two more?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So since we're talking about Lupe, I figured I'd talk about Chicago artists a little bit. Rhymefest, his album from this year, it's called James and Nikki, A Conversation. It's based on the conversation between James Baldwin and Nikki Giovanni.
Oh, wow.
It's a really well done concept. He has a bunch of female rap artists featured on it to sort of like, it's James and Nikki, so it's him and these other female artists. And I think there's an artist featured on every song, but it doesn't feel like too many features. It's a really I was blown away. I think a reason why I was blown away before when I listened to it is because I went back and listened to his first album right before I checked it out, and this album is way better. Like
Yeah.
with the first album, you could tell he was kind of like, it felt a little formulaic, but with the new album, it's it's very cohesive. It's a very well put together project. And
It's 30 minutes exactly. It's like 30 minutes,
yeah,
12 seconds. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, the album Blue Collar, it's like it's a classic. I was the ghostwriter and now they're letting me make my album.
mhm,
All over the place. So
yeah. But I will say that that album does have some amazing songs as well.
oh no question.
Uh,
No question. I saw
yeah.
him live. He killed it. What is the next one?
The last one, Chicago rapper Kembe X. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. There were rumors that he was going to sign to TDE at one point. That I think he is like managed by Musa, who's in TDE, but yeah, he has an album with this production duo called Hippie Sabotage. The album's called Sleep Paralysis, and it's really fucking good. He makes very like bouncy, accessible music, and I'm kind of surprised he's not bigger than he is. I think he's really fucking dope, and I he sent me some unreleased stuff that he's gonna be putting out soon. That shit's fire too, and yeah, an artist I'm really excited about, and I always check for him.
Yeah, great cover too. Great
Yeah.
cover. Yeah, I'm adding that. What do you Mega, what are you rocking with?
I've been listening to the Big Flowers Messiah Music Gang album, Save the Bees. Absolutely loving that.
Yep.
Everything about it, everything they put together on that is a really great listen. We had a little listening party on the Rap Music Plug Discord, and got the album, and it's kind of been on repeat for me a lot. Also, if I can shout out an album that's coming out on the 15th of this month of August, Alaska and Steel Tip Dove have their kind of their sophomore project together. It's called Reverberations of a Dead Man's Ego, and I kind of feel like this is the most Alaska that we've ever gotten.
Amazing.
Structural dynamics of flow, I thought came across as a little bit cynical, a little bit kind of like introspective in almost like not a nihilist way, but almost a curmudgeon type of way, which is,
Right, right.
if you know Alaska, it's kind of,
Yeah.
it's the dude. But this one to me is just like, it's upbeat, personal, a variety of topics. Alaska's rapping, at extremely high level, interesting. Some features on it are wild. Cryptic One is back. You got
Yes.
John Robinson on there. Yeah, Curly Castro. It's a phenomenal album that's coming out, and I'm excited for everybody to hear it.
Yeah, Alaska's always looking for his balance, right? Like, and when he has his balance, there's just nobody fucking with him.
Really, really great shit. Yeah.
Totally. The K, what are you doing? What are you bumping?
Nothing new this week, but you guys put me on to a couple things I'm gonna check out. So
Good deal. I shouted. I changed my ringtone for my son and for my wife. I gave them specific ringtones. They're delighted. Me and my son changed it so that our ringtone for each other is public service announcement. So that's gonna be a good time whenever we come. Shout out
Right.
to dad life,
Hey, shout out to Dad
Hell
Life.
yeah.
Amen.
Great part about dad life for people coming into it, all you have to do is stay there and you're a success. Sometimes
My
I'll give
favorite part is the existential dread.
yeah.
Like, after I had my
totally.
daughter, I was like, oh, so I've got to live another 20 years now and try not to upload all my bullshit into this little pristine hard drive. Let me
Fuck
let me
you.
let me relax a bit.
I remember early on, I was just like, you just have to live long enough for him to remember you. Like,
Damn.
focus on that. Focus on living long enough for the kid to have a fucking coherent memory. And once I hit that hurdle, I was like, whew, okay. you know, and that's one layer of horrific internal mental shit gone. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good stuff. That's another dad podcast we'll get into. But I appreciate you all coming. This was awesome. The Scouting Report series has been fantastic, and I can't wait to do more of it. Yeah, thank you for
Anytime for me, brother. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Mm,
appreciate you being on. This was awesome. Subscribe, Secret House Against YouTube channel. OGNick Marsh is now on Patreon.
Hey,
Yes.
I'm a
There's-
patron. I joined.
Thank you. Yeah, Grand Mega Flowers was actually my first patron this time
Wow,
around.
look at that.
So
Try my best.
shout out to Mega. That was awesome.
That's
I
the
was
way to
very
do
excited.
it. Put the money down.
Hey, he's on my Patreon too. You know, I just try to support the community.
That's beautiful. Yeah, no, shout out to the Patreon for us, for y'all, for everybody.
I got to get on y'all's Patreon. I didn't realize this
Oh,
is like
yeah.
I was aware of your show, but I hadn't listened to it because I don't go out of I don't really listen to a lot of hip hop media. I've been with Call Out Culture for years, and I barely go into to listen to any hip hop media stuff. I just like supporting people, you know. So
Absolutely. Oh man, if you ever get a chance, we had a crossover episode with Call Out Culture about 50 Cent.
oh word.
I got to ask Alaska how he felt about 50 Cent, and it was fucking it was the best.
I was not on board. I imagine me and Alaska probably have similar opinions about that one.
It was so good.
Get
But
rich or
yeah,
die trying. Bleh.
yep, we did the whole thing.
It's okay now. It's okay now.
It's a once a year joint. But yeah, shout out to everybody. Appreciate the love. We'll never forget you. Boom.
Welcome to Mars.